Japanese occupation in the Philippines. Historical events of the Japanese occupation. Between the year of 1941 to 1945, Japanese period happened, which is one of the darkest events in all Philippine history. It started in December 8, 1941, when the invasion of Ireland happened, and in December 24, 1941, Japanese forces were able to land and march on the northern area of the Philippines. The Bataan and the fortress island of Corregidor were the bases for the Philippine resistance against the Japanese, and over 76,000 POWs in Bataan that was captured by the Japanese was forced to march from Maribelis to Capas in Tarlac. It is called the Bataan Death March. Because of the Japanese occupation, many important necessities started to rise, and some diseases such as malaria, dysentery, and tuberculosis was the result. Almost all newspapers in English were stopped by the Japanese. During this time, there were no freedom of speech and of the press. Victoria Abelardo has described the Filipino writing during the Japanese occupation as being pessimistic and bitter. There were some efforts at escapist literature, but in general, the literary output is minor and insignificant because of strict censorship. Few literary works were printed during the war years. The weekly Liwayway was placed under strict surveillance until it was managed by a Japanese named Ishiwara. Most writers and authors were led to either go underground or write in Tagalog, so the Filipino literature was given a break during this period. Filipino literature also experienced renewed attention because writers in English turned to writing in Filipino. In October 20, 1944, Douglas MacArthur's force landed in Leyte with President Sergio Asmeña. From the month of March 3 to July 4, 1945, the Manila was cleared out of the Japanese and the Philippines were finally declared fully liberated. Influence of the Japanese. A strict curfew was enforced, Japanese currency was introduced, barangays, a military government was implemented, made some changes in the system of education. Characteristics of Japanese literature. Japanese literature can be difficult to read and understand because in many ways the written Japanese reflects certain peculiarities of the spoken language. Japan's deliberate isolation during the 17th and 18th centuries created a strong cultural homogeneity, and the literature of that period incorporated many common understandings that are unintelligible to someone who does not share the same background. Japanese literature tends to be emotional and subjective. rather than intellectual and consequently appeals strongly to modern readers all over the world, who can relate to sentiments and feelings which transcend historical changes and cultural differences. Themes of literature during Japanese occupation: nationalism, country, love, life in the various, faith, religion, and arts. Authors: Jose M. A. Hernandez is a writer and a teacher. He studied writing and acting in America. He wrote Panday Pira. Francisco Soc Rodrigo was a Filipino playwright, broadcaster, and the senator of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th Congress of the Republic of the Philippines. Also, he wrote Sa Pula sa Puti. Clodoaldo Del Mundo is a Filipino screenwriter, director, and author in 1968. He got a Bachelor of Arts degree at the Ateneo de Manila University in 1968. Also, he wrote Bulaga, an expression in the game hide and seek. Julian Cruz Balmaceda was a Filipino poet, essayist, playwright, novelist, journalist, and linguist. He made several words written in Filipino, English, and Spanish languages. He wrote Sino Ba Kayo, Dahil sa Anak, and Higante ng Patay.